Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mangum Talks TV. I am your host, Lee. Joined by my co-host, Spencer. Spencer, how are you tonight?
Calling you from an unusual location, but excited to talk some House of the Dragon.
That's right. This is our reaction podcast to the big episode, Rook's Rest, episode 4. Spencer, you've seen the episode. We watched it about an hour ago. We are the mics are hot. We are excited to talk about it. How did you feel?
I feel like I got to play a reverse Uno card this time. I don't do this often, but I want to put it back on you. You were disappointed last episode. You didn't feel that it was representing the way it needed to, the quality adaptation that you expect out of this show. Did this episode, the action episode that we've been looking forward to for a while, sufficiently impress you and give you confidence for this series going forward?
Yeah, I mean, they always do the action sequence as well, right? So they did this well. The animation with the dragons is really cool. The troops on the ground look solid. It's the storytelling in the battle that I'm interested in, and I'm also interested in the big swing that they took this episode. The big swing they took this episode,
huge swing,
for me, was not the departure from the canon. It was not anything to do with the battle. The big swing, I think they took was devoting as much time to the mysticism at Harrenhal and the magic sequences with Daemon as they did. This is not something common for Game of Thrones. Melisandre, they got into a little bit of this with, a little bit of North of the Wall stuff in the original series, but never 15, 20 minutes
not to
of
this
a
degree,
seminal
no.
episode of a season did they commit so much to this surrealist storytelling. So how did that let me hone my question for you, podcast professional that I am. That particular element, choosing to not let me be clear about this, not choosing to have some mysticism associated with Daemon's time in Harrenhal. We both agree that's probably necessary. The level of commitment to it, what did you think of that?
I felt like it was a long time coming. It's something I think that you and I both expressed we've kind of missed out of the broader Game of Thrones adaptation mythos, of where there is so much mysticism, there is so much otherworldly feeling when it comes to the books in terms of experiencing what the characters go through for so many of their different arcs. Not just Bran being Greenseer, but going into so many other characters. This is a world that is alive with otherworldly, with things that can't be explained, with just outright fantasy that is actively seeping into an otherwise realistic narrative. And that's been something I feel like that the show has overall struggled with. And so seeing so much of an episode of where it's the B plot. Can we agree that Daemon is the B plot of this episode? It's not necessarily the focus. It's not necessarily the biggest, what everyone's coming out for. It's secondary. But for that secondary plot, it was the bulk of it. It was overwhelmingly the focus of it was this general eerie feeling and mysticism that was wrapped up into not only Harrenhal, but Daemon's experience with Alice Rivers. And seeing them spend some time on that, I quite enjoyed it. It's something that I've previously felt like they've always viewed as something that was easy to leave on the editing room floor, and seeing it be so much a focus of this episode, I appreciated it.
I appreciated it. I'm glad they've done it. That's a big part of the books, the sort of, I guess I'll reuse the word surrealism, but it's the dream sequences, the not knowing what is real, what isn't. So think of Dany in the House of Undyne.
How abbreviated that was, relatively.
Right. We saw a little bit of that in the show. Those types of sequences are not uncommon in George's writing. And to have so much of the series seemingly now dedicated to it, because it doesn't look like they're going to stop that plot line anytime soon. They just gave us Allie Rivers. They gave us the first name, boy. We're first name basis with Allie now. We're going to get more of her at Harrenhal.
She's a character.
We're going to get more before we get less. I liked that. And I thought it was a great thing to intersperse with this really hyper dramatic, nervous energy that you were getting from the impending situation at Rook's Rest. So I liked the episode. That worked for me. My opinion is that the way that they did the battle at Rook's Rest, they changed some things from a plain reading of the book text, and it's very much a pro-con thing. You get, by the changes that they did, you get some benefits, you get some drawbacks, and
absolutely.
It's just how you see that pro-con list when it's put in front of you, as if you like it, if you like those changes.
To what degree? I'm assuming that we should discuss Aemon and his decision with respect to Aegon in terms of
what decision. What are you talking about?
The implication that I got from the show, and I'll rewatch it and confirm and solidify up that opinion,
Unbelievable.
is that Aemon intentionally chose to catch his king, his brother, in a bit of collateral dragonfire damage.
What? What are you talking about?
No.
Aemon,
Aemon sprayed,
right-hand man
prayed, and
of
ward off the
Aegon,
casualties.
absolutely champion of Team Green, does nothing but sacrifice himself. I'm fucking with you. Yes, of course. He tried
Yes.
to kill his brother 3 different ways this fucking episode.
Yes.
He was gung ho, ready to go. The first one was a little bit more subtle in that Aemond had Vagar ready to go, looked up, saw that
A
yellow
cold
dragon
trap.
going, saw the yellow dragon going. Yeah, exactly. Saw the yellow dragon going and said, down girl. By the way, low key, one of my favorite moments of the episode is Vagar going, okay, fuck it then, and going back to sleep.
I
Fantastic.
love that Vagar, old warrior, tired champion, is like,
I'm
oh, I
good.
get to rest for the 5 minutes? Sure, done. You don't need to
All
sell
good.
me on it.
Yeah. So, and then the second one was very much shooting fire
Yeah.
at Aegon. And then the third one seemed to me to be the end when the sword was coming out. I think that there is going to be some people leaving this
Confrontation.
episode saying, Aegon's dead. There's going to be some people leaving this episode going, well, if Aegon's dead, what was he doing with the sword? And why did he put the sword back in as soon as Cole said something? I think they want you to have that conversation. I think they want
100%.
you to be confused. I think they want you hanging on to see what's going on with Aegon with Sunfire next episode. So those are good conversations to have, exactly in line with the intent of the show. But yeah, absolutely. Aemon tried to kill his brother 3 different ways here.
And one thing I love with respect to the portrayal of the Dragon Comet, I mean, the CGI was great. They've clearly invested a lot of money in this. I think that's unassailable. But one of the things I think they did very well emotionally was that the devastation for the soldiers on the ground in terms of the Green's attack on Rook's Rest, well done. But the emotional effect of the dragons at war with each other, of the carnage, of the physical effect upon them, upon seeing Sunfire fall, that was perfectly well played in a way it needed to be. The dragons are characters in this show in a way they've not been before. I thought this episode did a good job of representing that in their moments of seeing a true dance of dragons on screen.
And the collateral damage that results from the dragons, the stepping, the Vagar stepping on people
on
as
that
he goes,
soldier.
which were green soldiers, right? When you had the dragon blood, which is boiling hot, right? Dragon blood is boiling
falling
hot,
on that
falling
guy.
down. That's burning people alive as it comes down. When Vagar fell, which by the way stuck the landing. Let's Paris Olympics
100%.
coming up. To our German judge, yep, 9.8. 9.8 stuck the landing.
Even
Vagar.
the German judge, wow.
Fantastic landing, but clearly took out a whole bunch of greens when he fell.
Doesn't matter.
So when Aemon's plan at the beginning of this episode, which he dropped just so disrespectfully, dropped in the middle of Aegon's small council meeting, and then told him in Valerian, which we later learned is a language Aegon barely understands, if at all.
A third language at best.
To get the fuck over it. His explanation was the way this war is going to be won is with armies on the ground and dragons fighting alongside them. Now, if what we saw this episode is any indication, Aemon views all ground soldiers as non-playable characters. He does not care because there's going to be an awful lot of people killed if you're doing it that way. Even if all goes well, right? Even if you're winning, because simply the dragons fighting overhead, falling down. I mean, Melee's fell into the castle. I think that's a new addition from the books. So there's just a lot of people dying from collateral damage from the dragons.
I'm suddenly blank. What was the name of what is the name of Aegon's youngest sister wife and the name of her dragon that fell when they were attacking Dorne? Because it felt very that in terms of
Visenya and
Visenya was the older
Meraxes.
sister.
Yeah. So Meraxes and Rhaena.
Yeah. It felt very that in terms of the dragon falling in the castle and the devastation that was associated with that. And I like that kind of feel and that reference to it because that's the original dragon death and the family casualties with respect to it. I love that we talked about that we only got to see one side of Aemon for the last few episodes. We got to see the hurt child, the abused sibling, the loner, the guy that never established family connections. And that was all we got to see the last few episodes. This episode, we got to see the other side of Aemon, and it was terrifying. And it was appropriately terrifying.
It's Rhaenys, not Rhaena.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you notice on the topic when Rhaenyra is in Dragonstone and she's about to tell Jace about the Song of Ice and Fire, in the back,
Yes.
like down the hallway, there's a dragon. There's a dragon skull. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
So that's clearly not Balerion. That has to be in King's Landing.
Yep.
I think it might have been Meraxes' skull. I think that might have been foreshadowing for what was about to happen to Rhaenys.
I am 100% there with you, and I love that you brought that up, because it can't be Balerion. It can't be anybody else that, some unnamed dragon. It's got to be that one. And this ties in perfectly to what we saw on screen later, because that was the one that the Dornish brought to Aegon as part of their, I say with giant air quotes, peace terms to try to end the conflict between them. So tying that in feels exactly on point. I also love that you referenced the fact that Aegon is speaking to Sunfire in English is such a wonderful addition. I don't remember any aspect of that in the book. But man, does that feel on point in terms of describing that character and his relationship with his dragon and the legacy that he's representing.
So poor Sunfire never really had a choice or never had a chance because Sunfire was never getting any direction from.
No. Sunfire was soloing the shit.
Had a drunken rider who couldn't even speak its language. What did you think? So one of the things that get me, sorry, I'm getting over a cold here.
You're good.
One of the things that gets me about this episode is that they made a point to show Rhaenys take multiple laps during this fight with Vhagar, where she could have gotten away. What do you think about that?
It's be interesting to unpack, and I'll be curious on other watchings, because the implication in the episode is that she clearly could have left. I think they displayed that on a couple different occasions, is that Rhaenys could have disengaged from this battle and been safe and returned home and returned to Corlys's arms, and that wouldn't have been an issue. And yet she consciously chose to return. My best guess from what we saw as duty is that her chosen mission was to defend Rook's Rest. And to the degree that she disengages, Rook's Rest falls. Now, the practical problem with that was that any returning to a conflict with Vhagar, can we agree that that's a certain element of suicide? That her odds upon returning to an active conflict with Vhagar, not Aemon, Aemon's just around for the ride, but returning to conflict with Vhagar, any percentage chance of not only succeeding but surviving is under 15%.
I'm not sure Aemon's along for the ride. I think
Aemon's contributing. Sure, I don't mean to discount him.
Certainly helped Vhagar win that battle in one particular sequence, which we'll talk about. But no, I show Vhagar, yes. I just want to make the point, and I just don't see this getting emphasized enough in the myriad of people who cover this show, of how much bigger it seems relative to the other dragons Vhagar is in the show compared to the books, right? Like
Godzilla.
Meleys is probably maybe 2/3, 3/4 the size of Vhagar in the book. It seemed to me that Vhagar was about 3 times the size of Meleys in the show. So yes, to your point, yeah, absolutely. When she kept circling back, going back to the battle, even after seeing Vhagar fall down, it would still seem dangerous to do that and foolhardy. I think the only reasonable explanation from this that I can think of, I've been thinking here the last hour about why would Rhaenys keep doing that, was I know I'm going to die. I know once she saw Vhagar rise up right after fighting with the king.
That image of Vhagar rising from the forest was a thing of beauty, by the way. Just to mention that.
Fantastic, a horrific shot. So much tension, and as soon as she saw that, she knew she was dead, or at least in her mind, she said, "Okay, I'm dead." But I can hurt Vhagar because no one dragon. If we kill Vhagar, Team Black, it's going to have to be a team effort. No one dragon's going to be able to do it. So I have got to hurt Vhagar. And if that was the goal, I dare say she succeeded, because we saw a really hard belly claw on Vhagar, clearly caused some bleeding, and Vhagar did fall. So I think to the extent that we've seen Vhagar get in any sort of trouble this entire series, it seems like maybe he got damaged or she got damaged there. So that's the only thing I could think of, is that she was thinking this is a phased approach with taking out Vhagar, and I'm step one.
Yeah, I think that she had a duty to protect Rook's Rest, and so disengaging would have been in violation of that duty. And I'm also with you that there's maybe a certain degree of either detachment or resigning to the idea of, even if I escape, there's a, I can't. She could have escaped, but I think she committed. And I think in that act of committing, she decided to do as much damage as possible. And pound for pound, Meleys, Rhaenys, the queen that never was, they have passed beyond. They're dead from what we saw of them most likely. But from what damage they inflicted, Vhagar was hurt, and I don't. We'll see next episode what state both Sunfire and Aegon are in, but from what we saw, it doesn't look great. And so, in terms of the balancing of powers, the Blacks already had an advantage of dragons, and what damage she inflicted, it seemed like that she, I wouldn't say punched outside of her weight class, but did much more damage than she otherwise represented. And that's a win for her cause in a way that few other ones could accomplish.
If they could just plug that algorithm on the spreadsheet, what happened in this battle, that Blacks would win, because they can't, the Greens can't trade dragons and chip away at Vhagar's strength the whole time, right? Because they will lose doing that. So yeah, Rhaenys represented for sure. They lost Rook's Rest, it looked like, which
a relatively minor loss, considering what was at play here.
Right.
Which even under Cole's plan, the main plan was the ambush. Rook's Rest was just a means to that purpose.
It seems like the real story coming out of this is that throughout the realm, there's going to the news of what happened to the king, either dead or seriously injured, is going to spread. That Rhaenys, queen that never was, did the thing that she declined to do a few weeks ago. I think my impression when that scene happened, back in the penultimate episode of season 1, was that they were getting a little cute with this sequence then of her neglecting to fire on Aegon then, knowing that she would have the chance to fire on him later. I didn't think that scene was necessary. I still don't, but really believe that they had an eye toward the fact that Rhaenys was going to be the one to drop the king from the sky in this season when they filmed that. So I think that's the big story coming out of this, right? And then of course you'll want to see. We're all going to be on pins and needles waiting for Corliss's reaction to this.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. We've discussed that scene in season 1, 9th episode, was one of our least favorite scenes of the overall show in terms of where it fit in and what logic was at play and not at play in terms of making it work. The way they seem to be framing it here is that unlike then, now she actually has instructions from her queen. She volunteered for the purpose, but her queen sent her on a mission. It's no longer a war for her to start. It's a war for her to fight, and she chose to fight it. And we got to see it in epic fashion here. And as also a side note, can we continue Alicent's award for Worst Mother of the Year? I mean, I know that she has steep competition at times, but I felt like she had a few other further acts and further evidence here, particularly with her actions with Aegon.
So let me here you go. It's political season, right? We're in campaign season.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't avoid it.
Let me be clear about my position, America.
Yes, please. Go on. Go on, please.
I do not support Alicent Hightower.
Yes, you made that very clear.
Not today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, neither here nor there, not anywhere, Spencer. Do I support Alicent Hightower?
No.
I will say,
no, he says, no.
The unnecessary amounts of guilt that they are piling on this character is sort of epic. It's like even more than I want to put on the character. It's like
it's a lot.
So she's clearly blaming herself for Jaehaerys's death.
Yes,
right?
Because of Aemon and her lack of control of him, sure.
Right. Or a lack of control of her dalliances with the Lord Commander of the King's Guard.
Luke's death, not Jace's death, Luke's death.
No, Jaehaerys.
Oh, okay, sure, okay.
Jaehaerys' death. Sorry,
I think you're talking about. Now I understand what you're going for. Sure, go on.
Clearly blaming herself for Jaehaerys' death with what was going on with her and Kristen Cole that evening. Now is likely going to put a lot of the blame for what happened with Aegon this episode on herself in this conversation that we saw. Neither one of those things are her fault. And it is sort of unbelievable the amount of she sucks a lot, but she's going to sit around hating herself for stuff she shouldn't sit around hating herself for.
If I was her counselor, I'd also have a conversation with her. She clearly is now putting the extra guilt on herself that I started this because I misinterpreted what Viserys said on his deathbed. Which, as we discussed last episode, honey, your dad was going to launch a coup regardless. This is not on you that this war has begun. Many deeds have occurred outside of your immediate control. You are not even the central character of your own story, much less the overall narrative. Please take a moment, eat a Snickers. It's going to be okay. But I'm with you. The main aspect we're getting out of her character is guilt compounded on guilt in a means that just feels utterly futile and utterly pitiful. And that seems like that's going to be a main aspect of her arc going forward.
I'd like to see what she does to her counselor who calls her honey. It's either
Honey wouldn't go
tongue
well.
taking or a couple hands off, or I don't know what it
Well,
would be. She's going to be whatever. She's going to be in a foul mood this next episode. I do think that, like, my whole point in that Jag was she's going to shoulder a lot of the blame for what Aegon did on that
what
conversation.
She said to her. Yes.
Yeah, she was really rough around the edges in that conversation. Aegon did what he did because Aegon's a fucking moron.
Yes.
And it wasn't Allison who should bear that responsibility for it. I think the change, I don't know. Having Aegon do this out of a petulant, like,
surprise insertion into Cole's plan, sure.
Yeah, desire to prove himself was a really interesting move. And the one thing it did that I did like is that it now allows the Cole character, without a shadow of a doubt, to know that Aemon tried to kill Aegon.
Yeah.
Cole is the only one.
Adore that going forward.
He knows it for sure because he knows.
Yeah. Sword drawn.
Before that, he knows that Aemon and Vhagar are waiting. That's why he says, "Give the call. Give the call." He gives the call. He hears it because it's a auditory call, so he knows it got to Aemon.
Yeah.
And the king flies in and no Aemon. And he goes, you watch him connect the dots that Aemon has left the king hanging out to dry, fighting melees. And that's why he takes off to go yell at Aemon.
Didn't Gawain even specifically turn to Cole and even ask, is this the plan? You're putting the king out there right now?
Right.
I think Cole even outright said, no, but let's do this now.
So even before the sword, he knows that Aemon left him out to dry. Yes. And then he also got the sword thing. So, like, you have one character now where there's a small check on Aemon because at least one character has some kind of accountability for that, like for Aemon. Like, Cole has some level of accountability for Aemon going forward. I like that that's been inserted into the situation because absent that, you can't do nothing with this fucking Aemon guy. Like, I mean, he doesn't listen to anybody. He doesn't take direction, particularly well, Spencer. That's one thing I've noticed about his character, podcast professional that I am. And he also has the largest nuclear weapon that he's riding around in, who just proved exactly how strong she is by just snapping the neck of the largest dragon in Team Black.
Yeah, 100%. It's a wonderful addition in my mind because it adds such an interesting dynamic between these two characters. Where Cole, he's a character everybody loves to hate in the books, but he's kind of one note. And so adding this degree of not only complexity with his relationship with Alicent, but also adding that he's got a certain dynamic occurring with Aemond, that's fun. That's something interesting to explore, and I'll be curious to see what they do with it. I'll be curious to see how that mixes into his relationship with Alicent. Does he tell Alicent this? She already knows of Aemond's sins previously. She already presumes these kind of deeds out of him. Does he reveal to her that your younger son tried to murder your older son? And given the show's ambiguous situation with respect to who Aegon's heir is, you could even frame it on the subject of, this was basically a coup by means of dragonfire. What do we do about that?
Yeah, I think that's, you bring up a good point, which it does seem like they're doing the Cole character. They're writing the Cole character better than Martin wrote Cole because there's just more layers to the character. There's more
he's
depth.
He's just kind of hateful in the book.
Yeah, he's a fairly one-note, hateful meathead, and there's a lot going on with this Cole character in the show. Where now that I've got the number of things going on with him that I do, I anytime he's faced with a decision point, I've got a lot of things I'm thinking about. Not just like, okay, well, he's just a hot-tempered jerk.
Well, it's great to spend 2 episodes now seeing Cole in his element, of where seeing him in King's Landing, it's easy to despise him in terms of interacting with other characters, his pettiness, his self-loathing, his complete lack of understanding of diplomacy and the necessary intricacies of interacting with other, political forces. all that's apparent. We've discussed it in detail. Seeing him on the field, putting together a plan, making moves, being a leader in battle, interacting with the degree of Alicent's children in the field, all of that is great and shows such a side of his character that you can understand why people would give him this position as Lord Commander, why people would follow him into battle. And I think they're doing a good job. We've discussed to what degree they're providing the necessary complete picture of certain characters and where they are and where they aren't. It's a weird thing to say, but I think they're doing Cole great. Of where now going into this episode, I understand the complete picture of the man in a way that I haven't before and will accept and resonate with me going forward.
Yeah, we agree on that for sure. The last scene where Cole is looking at the king and Sunfire drops to his knees, while Aemon has the cat's paw dagger, by the way, which is kind of cool symbolism to give him the cat's paw dagger.
I love that he has pocketed that essentially now. Yes.
Yeah, and so I normally, if we're going to do the reaction pod, I don't like pause or I just watch it one time through. I did go back and watch that 5 to 7 seconds or whatever again.
It's brief, yeah.
Because I had to verify that I could hear Sunfire breathing, and I could. You could hear the dragon breathing, and I think it was pronounced enough that I don't feel like that's some sort of like deep spoiler or something. Like, at least at the end of that episode, it seemed like the chest was going up and down and heaving. Now, what shape that dragon is in, God only knows. But
probably not great.
Right, it's not good. But that dragon did seem to be breathing, which I thought was interesting that they took enough pains to show that to you this episode. It was almost, when I watched it back the second time, it was almost as if they didn't want that to be the thing that you were thinking about. It was more the king, right? It was more the state of Aegon.
The king is the ambiguity. The dragon lives. To what degree does the king breathe? And I think it's a wonderful. Cole's reaction is ambiguous. The fact that the cat's paw dagger, the representation that the House of the Dragon is painted upon who is the heir, who is carrying forward the story of Ice and Fire, the legacy of the Targaryens, it now sits in Aemon's belt. What does that mean going forward in terms of the succession? What is the current state of the king, and what will come after? That, going into the next episode, I think the show is making willfully and appropriately ambiguous.
I agree. Going back, anything else on the Battle of Rook's Rest? Anything else you want to talk about the Battle?
I think as we've described, it was wonderfully well done. I mean, I thought there was a lot of build up going towards it in terms of the Daemon B plot, but also just the times when King's Landing, even leading up to Aegon's decision and the battle to occur. But the battle itself, I won't say flawless, but I would say it was a marvelously well done event, and I think for a lot of fans, a necessary bit of action occurring at 4 episodes into this season.
It works for me if, when Team Black is back in the locker room after the events of this fourth quarter and are chatting about this, there is some conversation or recognition that Rhaenys could have flown away and some in-world explanation for us about why she did not. I would like to see somebody on that council go, well, why didn't she just get the hell out of there when she saw Vhagar? And baby Corlys speaks up and goes, she wouldn't have done that. She got her orders and da-da-da-da-da. Like, address it in world. Don't make us think that that's something you missed. Mm-hmm. That she could have gotten out of there, but chose not to. And like, there's no real tie up for that. Like, it's particularly important for the book readers because Meleys is like written as the fastest dragon in the realm, like known to be particularly fast.
Could have gotten away.
Right. So it's just important to connect those dots. They do that. And then I start having trouble finding a lot of flaws in it. And then I think that then the plot piece doesn't get in the way of just the sort of eyes roll in the back of your head enjoyment of watching this spectacle unfold, because it is fun. It absolutely was fun. But as a big fan of the series and the associated world and the works of George R. R. Martin, like, I also want to okay, let's make sure it all makes sense, because I'm the guy that got on a reaction podcast and told you I liked the Long Night episode. I liked the Battle of Winterfell. And then everybody started breaking it down and told me how stupid I was. So I guess I got to figure out, okay, is this really good? And I think one of the ways that we tend to do that is, okay, on rewatch, when you slow it down and think about it, does the plot connect for you? The one thing I feel like is a slight hole here is
Why
once
did she
she
turn around?
once she got Aegon, once Aegon fell, and she's knocked Aemon and Vhagar down. Why wouldn't you just get the hell out of there? And I think they can do it in a couple sentences. Just give it, like you said, give me the sentence and I'll be good.
So what we so often talk about is it doesn't take much of an effort to, like so many. It's a principle of shows that you should show, not tell. But occasionally you do need to tell. You can't leave your audience just left alone in a world to interpret what the hell you mean about ambiguous events. You need to give them some degree of direction, and offering a sentence, offering some understanding from a character that know her next episode would mean a lot to give us some better means of understanding and breaking down her motivations of a character that, at least at present, it's one of the seemingly intentional ambiguities wrapped up in this episode of why did a character that had a means of escaping choose to return to the fight.
One thing I wanted to point out about Damon's situation in Harrenhal that occurred to me is he's in Harrenhal, he's having these dream sequences, he seems to be floating in and out of reality. He finds his way into the laboratory of Alice Rivers. He's having a conversation with her. And it seems to me, and this is just my first watching of it, it seems to me that they gave us all the evidence that we need that Alice is behind these sequences that are going on with Damon.
Absolutely. I agree.
And we got it in a sort of a way that you might not expect. Like, I think we got it because of how bold she is with him.
Mm-hmm.
She's in control of the situation with Damon because no one else, Rhaenyra, Baela, nobody in the realm
speaks to Damon like that,
would speak to him the way that she's speaking to him. And she just fucking met the guy. She has got to be in control of the situation. I feel like that is our clue as the audience of like, we know Damon. We know how people speak to Damon. She's talking to him this way. There must be a reason.
It leaves me to ask, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this. They have now done 2 episodes in a row of Damon Prophecy, and it clearly seems to be something that they want to spend time with and want to marinate on. If she is directing this, do you think this is going to be a repeated motif in episodes in the future of further visions as long as he's remaining in Harrenhal or even outside of Harrenhal? Is this something that they want to further go into about what is she trying to depict or direct when it comes to Damon and what he sees and his actions going forward?
It would seem to me, like I just suggested, that she is in control of the situation. Now let's assume that means that she's even directing the nature of the visions, not just that he's having them, right? Not just spiking your drink, but also choosing, like writing the computer program that you see in your VR headset, right?
Coding.
Let's say she's doing that. If she's doing that, then I think the most important part of that storyline, other than when is Kristen Cole arrive ready to fight, like that's obviously what we're all going to be thinking about.
Building there, yeah.
In the interim, is what does Alice Rivers want? Because if she can control what Damon is seeing, as long as he's in that building, then we need to know what her end game is. That becomes very important. And so if they continue down that path of storytelling, I expect to maybe see a few scenes with Alice talking to people that aren't Damon. So we can as the audience start to piece together what her motivations are and start to formulate some theories as to what she's doing with him.
I would be excited to see that. I think this is an interesting thing that they have, I will say, inserted. I mean, one could say that certain aspects of anything Alice Rivers does are widely and vaguely implied in the books, but seeing how much time that she's directing these visions with Damon, I feel like is new. And seeing where they go with that, now that we've seen it repeated, I feel like this is something they want to explore further, and I'm kind of excited to unpack myself what they want to tell us about Alice River through this.
Final thing I'll say on the episode that I wanted to point out that I really liked was they let Jace buck Rhaenyra a little bit.
And I like that. I like that we didn't talk about it as much last episode, but Jace, I saw this on rewatch, was pretty buildingly pissed at Rhaenyra over the last episode about obvious, visible frustration about her inaction. And seeing him finally, pardon the term, call the old lady out was appreciated. And seeing this is a character that has his own desires, his own thoughts, his own resistant to his mother's style of rule, and having that voiced was well appreciated.
Is call the old lady out like a phrase?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard that.
It's usually call the old man out, but call the old lady out applies just as well.
I see. Okay. Yeah, because it kind of seemed to, because you said pardon the phrase, so that makes me think you put, like, if you were writing it down, you'd have put quotes on it. So I'm like, hold on, I don't know that phrase. It seemed to me that when Jace was willing to buck her the way he did in front of the council, which, by the way, her council sucks, but when he
not great.
We're gonna break that down, that whole sequence with the council down, and like that was all kinds of problems. She's got head's gonna have to roll. We got to start firing people. We got to fire a lot of people on the Black Council.
Yeah.
Join us Wednesday. We're gonna be firing a lot of the Black Council.
we're gonna fool the apprentice on the Black Council.
Got to get rid of some Black Council members. But when Jace was bucking her in front of the council, it seemed to me that instead of getting angry, how dare you speak to me this way in front of all these people? Instead, she seemed to take it as a sign of, okay, now I really have to pivot. Like now
I've lost
like,
the room.
Yeah, like that was almost her bellwether, right? Of, oh, when Jace is pushing me like this, then I've got to let him know behind the curtain a little bit more than I've been letting him behind the curtain, which is when she goes, look, guys, I just had to know because this is how I honor my father's legacy. Which, by the way, that like I've been hard on the Rhaenyra character. I've been annoyed at it, but the explanation of this is how I honor his legacy.
Us the sentence.
Yeah, like I kind of bought that. If you were trying, she truly loved her father, and we got that through all of season 1, right? Truly loved him. Her trying to honor his legacy in the immediate aftermath of his death would have pushed her to do some relatively unreasonable things,
right.
Which I think her behavior in the first 3 episodes was relatively unreasonable. I kind of bought all that. And then she goes, and now I know, so fuck them, let's go burn them. I'm like, okay, like now I'm kind of in like a little bit.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Because as you and I have talked about, I think you said like episode 2, that if they're going to go this route of she's actively working to fulfill her father's legacy and she feels obliged to do so and bound to do so, they need to say that. They need to demonstrate that this is actually what she's committed to. Well, we got the lines last episode, seeing her actually give a speech on it completed in my mind that demonstration of why Rhaenyra has been doing what Rhaenyra has and hasn't over the last few episodes. And it felt necessary, and it establishes, as you said, the appropriate pivot to, and now I know that doesn't work. And now I know I can't do that. And now I know as much as I've tried to find a way to be a peaceful realm, to find a way to find a peaceful solution, that can't work. Here's what we're doing from here. And that felt surprisingly earned in a way I wasn't expecting. Because as frustrated as we were with Rhaenyra, to hear her now call out, yeah, I tried and it fucking didn't work, felt cathartic for how much frustration we've had with her actions. It's her representing herself of, I felt obliged to do this, and now that it's failed, here's the new route we're taking.
I tried, and here's why.
Yes.
And that here's why worked for me. Like, it's an example, gotta let them cook, right? Because, like,
yes,
I was kind of out on how they were handling the Rhaenyra character and was falling into the trap. Look, folks, it's going to shock everybody who's listening to this podcast that I am not perfect. I was starting to fall into the line, the dreaded pit of inferring intentions, right?
Yes.
Before it's over. Right? I feel like you can infer intentions once the story's over, but mid-story, if you start trying to infer intentions, you can run yourself into trouble, which I was starting to run myself into, which was like, well, they just want a kinder, softer Rhaenyra so that we all just like her more. Now, they still may be going that way, right?
I think that's still true.
Maybe, but I think the events of episode 1, 2, 3, like how Rhaenyra was operating, have been sufficiently explained to me in an attempt to honor the legacy of Viserys. Bought that hook, line, and sinker, so gotta let them cook, Spencer.
I feel like it almost puts us in the mindset of the Black Council in a way that's a lot of fun. Of where I think you and I both, by the end of last episode, we were saying like the Black Council, we hate them, they suck, but we're kind of on the same camp as they are in terms of calling out Rhaenyra. Now it feels like we've been in the same situation as them, confronted with the same conversation with them as with Rhaenyra, and been as equally surprised to hear it from her mouth. So that feels like a well done bit of structured storytelling to kind of take us on that arc of responding to her character.
Yeah, we agree. So a lot to look forward to as we look ahead to future weeks. We will be with you on Wednesday evening to review the full episode. We'll do the full detailed breakdown like we always do. We'll be firing some people in the Black Council for sure. We'll be doing a detailed breakdown of exactly what the hell happened at Rook's Rest. How many times did Aemon try to kill Aegon? Is it 2, 3, 4? I don't know. It was a lot. It was a big number.
Too many.
We're gonna count them all, and then we're also gonna break down exactly how we expect the Greens to be managed going forward, right? Because it seems like if Aegon's alive, he probably is in a position to be able to rule right now. And there's this ongoing argument in the fandom about does Maelor exist? Maelor the Missing, as George R. R. Martin called him. Maelor the Missing, if he's around, if Aemon takes over now or whatever, we'll look to canon, we'll look to the story and see do we have any evidence for where we can expect the powers of Green to vest going forward. So we'll do all of that and more on the podcast Wednesday. Join us then. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good start to your week. See you.